Welcome to Hope Shot. I'm Sonia, and I'm so glad that you could join us today. Today, I have a very special treat. My mom is going to share her experience on what it was like being the parent of an addict and dealing with somebody who was in active addiction all the way to recovery. Thank you so much for joining me today, Mom.
It's a pleasure.
So I just want to start out, maybe you could talk about what it was like in my childhood. Like, did you have any hints that I might become an addict?
Um, I mean, really, no, not when you were a child. I mean, you were like the golden child or whatever, the way I see it. I mean, you slept through the night, really after the first month. I mean, you were an easy kid. And we just had so much time together. I mean, we were kind of best friends when you were a kid growing up. I mean, we did everything together. So, yeah, I mean, I really had no signs when you were young. I mean, you were, straight A student in school. You seemed to really love school. You had a lot of great friends. I didn't see any signs, not until you were of the age where you were interested in boys.
Yeah, good point.
That's always a big so, and even then, I mean, you had, some cute little boyfriends and the academy that you went to or whatever. But yeah, I mean, as you got a little older, then I obviously saw signs, but not as a kid. You were an IB student. You were,
Wow.
at Riverview High School, headed to great things, super
Mhm.
smart.
Yeah. Well, tell me what was when did you start to notice there was a problem?
Well, I, I mean, there was always little things when you were in your teenage years. And I'll just tell this one story because it kind of sets the stage for me noticing when you have a problem. Because when you were, I want to say 15, I'm not sure exactly how old it was, but uh, I had gone on a date for like an hour and a half. I left the house for a very short period of time. We just went up to shoot a game of pool up at the local, hobnob place, whatever. And I was gone, hour and a half. I come back and there's a cigarette burning in the ashtray. And it's like freshly lit. Okay. It's hardly burned at all. And I look at my date, I won't name him, and I said, look, we left a cigarette in the ashtray. I mean, that's how I mean, I could not imagine that I mean, I just assumed it was me. I never even crossed my mind that it would be you. So yeah, and then he looked at me and he's like, for real? It's not our cigarette.
Yeah, I remember
So
that.
yeah, so I mean, the parent is always, I feel like, we I always felt like I expected the best out of you. So if I wanted you to live up to my expectations. And the only way a child can live up to your expectations is to set some for them. So, when you were doing things, I just, okay, she's going through a phase. Okay, that this too shall pass, so to speak. So that's, and then once you started, dating, there was, some not good influences that, changed all that. So
Right. And maybe you could talk about that for a minute too, because I was in an abusive relationship for many years, and I know that was really, really hard on you.
yeah,
So, and that's also when my addiction really took hold, so maybe
right.
you could talk about what that was like as well.
Yeah, I mean, you had another little boyfriend before this one, and
Mhm.
although he wasn't perfect, I mean, he was pretty much, good to you. He wasn't abusive. You both were young. But then you met this other person, we'll leave him unnamed, and it was awful. I mean, he was so abusive. And it wasn't just physical abuse. I mean, the physical abuse is one thing, but the mental abuse is unbelievable. I mean, I would come pick you up to take you to a store to buy you some shoes, whatever. And we wouldn't be in the store 3 minutes. And he was constantly calling, when are you coming back? What are you doing? I know she doesn't like, I mean, it was just, I could not spend 1 minute alone with you where he wasn't just, calling and bugging. Um, I really tried to like him, encourage him to do things, but I mean, he didn't come from a great place anyway. So he, you know, to be fair to him, he really didn't have a good upbringing. He didn't really know a lot better. But regardless, I remember one time I went over there and I saw your dog that you just loved, and he had these like scars around his legs, and I'm like, what the heck? And it looked like he had been hogtied. And those are the kind of mental things that he would do to you that, you know, kept you in that place. I mean, it was horrible. And then the bruises and stuff. I mean, there were, I literally, I really could have probably had him taken out. I mean, I sent your dad over there one time and I was so afraid that he was actually going to do what I asked him to do that I sent my brother-in-law after him to go stop him. So oh, it was not good. And oh yeah, it was not good.
And it's funny because I was just at Celebrate Recovery telling my story last night, and I talked about that, and it really was like the mental abuse. And that night with the dog, I was at work one day and he was mad at me. And in order to get to me, he hog-tied my dog, put him in the bathtub and beat him. And I didn't know about it for like 2 weeks, but the dog wouldn't come out of the cage. I could smell something on the dog because he duct taped his arms and his legs. And then he used chemical remover, I guess, to get the duct tape off of him. Oh, it really just makes me so angry just sitting here talking about it right now, you know?
Yeah,
But
I mean, that's your dog, you know, I mean,
yeah.
yeah. So when I would see him do those things, I mean, it was just, I wanted to hurt him. I really did. And his mom was no better. I mean, her and I almost went fisticuffs in the parking lot that day that he went to jail,
Yeah.
you know, because she was making excuses for him. You know, here he is, you know, his idea was, well, I'll just sit on her so that, you know, I won't hit her. I'll just sit on her, you know, and pin her down. I'm like 911, you know, I mean, and then luckily the people there with you also, you know, told. Otherwise, he would have convinced you to not say anything. And that, I think that was kind of the beginning of trouble for you guys. You know what I mean? When that all started. And I'll be honest with you, I was never happier than the day he went to jail.
Yeah.
And I feel like I was lining up boys. Look at this nice guy. Look at this nice guy.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, you know, I know he's still around today. I hope that he is better, in a better place, but I'm just glad it's not with you.
Yeah, me too. I'm really grateful I got away from that. And when he went to jail, I knew that was my cue to leave. And I did leave with a boy.
Yes,
now
you
my
did.
husband.
Of which I approved.
Yeah.
I'd known him since he was, you know, 14 years old. He had always addressed me as yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am. So I knew he had some good upbringing. So I figured there was hope.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we moved away to Georgia. And how did you feel when we moved away?
That was really tough. I mean, I knew it was not that far away. So, you know, I knew I could, you know, go up and visit you or whatever. But, you know, at the time you were in a pretty rough place still. I mean, you were, you know, you were using, I wouldn't say it was your worst days, but you were definitely using. And he seemed, and I, you know, to this day, I still don't know for sure, but he seemed like he wasn't as much. And he was being responsible. You know, he was a working, what do they call it? A functioning addict.
Right.
You know, he, you know, held a job and, you know, paid your bills. He had a car. I mean, you know, that's like my 3 questions. Does he have a job? Does he have a car? Does he have a place to live? If they don't have one of those, you need to move on.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, that was a very sad day. I still can see the pictures and, you know, but I was hopeful. I was hopeful that things were going to turn around.
Yeah. And then we got pregnant, and then we had a baby, and then we got married, and then we had another baby. So you were living in Florida for the first several years of me having my children getting married. How does that feel?
Well, did a lot of road trips
Mhm. Yes, you did.
and a few flights.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I made it like a few hours after Nick was born. I was fortunate enough to be there for Aiden's birth.
Mhm.
So, and, I just probably spent 3 weeks or 4 weeks a year, visiting or, having you come down and visit. I mean, in some ways we spent a little bit more time together because we were actually together as opposed to just living in the same city. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
We actually did kind of do things together. I mean, it was tough near the end before you moved back. Those were some scary times. But otherwise, it was sad to have you up there. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I
And
mean, honestly, I would have had, 3 or 4 kids, but God only blessed me with you.
right.
And I think he knew what he was doing because, later down the road, I was me raising 2 boys. So
Right.
at least for a little bit. So
Yeah. Well, let's kind of move on to that part. So I did move back here. So when I came back, it was several years later. Did you know that I was using drugs at that point?
which move was it?
When I came back from Georgia and
Yeah,
moved here. And so I was like living a double life. Nobody knew this, but the real reason I wanted to come back is because I had started using my first drug of choice again.
right,
So I got
right.
Steve and the kids to come back with me. And I was working at the paper route.
Yeah.
Yep. And you got me that job, remember?
Mm-hmm.
And I was using before work and I was using after work and I was hiding it from everybody. And I remember Steve thought I was cheating on him because I was, disappearing here or there and hiding my phone and being questionable. And that is when Department of Children and Families got called.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, I did know that you were. I mean, I was suspicious. I wasn't 100% sure what it was. But the one thing that I can say about our relationship is that you were usually honest with me,
Yeah.
even though I didn't like it.
Mhm.
Um, usually you were honest with me. So we did discuss the fact that, at the time your drug of choice was, at that time, it was cocaine,
Yeah, it was.
and it was not, it was, snorting it or whatever. So
Mhm.
I did know about that. I didn't like it. But you had some incidents, tough time at work. You couldn't, get the job done and, getting the kids to and from school. I mean, yeah, I knew about it a little bit.
Yeah.
And I was not surprised when Children and Family Services showed up. Although we had not been through that. That was our first real episode with Children and Family Services.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a life-changing event for sure.
Right. And then it wasn't too long after that that the kids moved in with you.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. Aiden was not in school.
Mhm. I think he was
And
in pre-K.
was he in pre-K?
Yeah, I think so.
Because Nick yeah,
Nick was
he
in
might have been.
kindergarten.
I know Nick was going to Lakeview, right?
I can't remember the name of the school.
Or Brentwood. That's
Brentwood.
right.
Yes.
You had to have
Okay.
both. That's right. They had the pre-K. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he
So,
went to Lakeview after that.
so the kids moved in with you, and we actually closed that case plan in 45 days because I was able to pass the drug test. And then literally days later, they opened up a new case plan because Steve and I were arguing and the kids were in the car. The cops got called. It was like that. You remember
Yeah.
that day?
Well, that was one of the biggest suspicions for me, is that you and Steve were always fighting. Like, it was unhealthy fighting. I mean, I was constantly on you guys about not talking that way in front of the kids or whatever. I mean, I definitely remember that. And with that case plan at the time, I was actually taking care of my mom too. And we were able to get the kids back in your house. And I think I think you lost your apartment, didn't you?
Yes.
And you convinced me somehow to let you stay with me,
Mhm.
and I did. And you guys had left with the kids, and Steve was calling me saying to come get them because y'all were fighting. So we were kind of on our way to go pick them up that day.
Mhm.
And long story short, we ran into you at the gas station. I looked at the boys. They were in the back of the truck. They were like lightning beams out of that car into my car. And as Bob and I were pulling out of the parking lot with the children, I see the cops coming down the road. I'm like, oh, here we go. I mean, literally by the grace of God, we snatched the kids up that time and got them out of the way. But yeah, it was not good. It was not a good scene. That was a bad time.
Right. And that's really when the kids like stayed with you from that point on
Yeah.
until I would get clean several years later. So what were those years like especially in the beginning? Like how were you and the kids? And I know you were taking care of Nana at the time.
Yeah, I mean, it was really hard because I was already struggling caring for my mom who had Alzheimer's and lung cancer. And she was a handful. I mean, I had to feed her meals. I mean, she was involved in hospice. I had hospice coming in and out of my house all the time. So it was really traumatic. Um, little cough. Um, but I remember thinking, and I'm gonna cry a little bit.
Okay.
Um, I just didn't know how I was gonna do it. So I just prayed about it. And all right, give me a second. I got a cough. You know, I've told you the secret. If you cough, it makes the tears go away. So
Yes.
I don't have a cold, making the tears go away. But yeah, I didn't know how I was gonna do it. And I got into prayer and I just got on my hands and knees and I was like, Lord, how am I gonna do this? Nobody else is taking those boys. It was gonna be me. And he just answered me. I mean, I heard him as clear as a bell. And he just said, teach him about me. That's all you have to do. And so that's what I did.
Yeah.
And so I just made sure I had him. And, we went to church every Sunday. We read Bible stories every night. We were still living in the drama. I mean, you guys were still involved. I mean, it was still just a hot mess. You know what I mean? But I just tried to keep them focused on school, church, love, just stay in a routine, to keep them away from it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So it got really bad before it got any better.
yes, real
Yeah.
bad. Yeah.
So maybe you could talk about what it was like those last few years, because I know it was really scary those last few years.
Yeah. I mean, in the beginning, it was always about, and not that Coke can't kill you or smoking crack or all that stuff. I mean, it puts you in very bad places with bad people. I mean, but once I knew you were kind of starting to shoot up with the heroin, I mean, there are so many stories that we could talk about that. Falling out, having the boys. I mean, I remember, I think you had moved back to Augusta at some point. I mean, I remember being in a grocery store with you in Augusta, in a Walmart, and
Oh
you couldn't
God,
even stand up for us to check out.
I
You
remember
kept
that.
like falling, and it was so. I mean, I just wanted to take boys and run. You know what I mean? Like I didn't know what to do. Um, it was really hard. I mean, I think you've talked about the one time when I left the boys with you, and you fell out in the room. And there was a lot more to that, but I mean, it was just I knew that I had to figure out a way to get them away from you. And child services stepped in again. I think it was when you got arrested for the felonies that next time.
Yeah.
Because they were kind of living with me, and then they would put them back because they were safe. They closed the case, and then when you got arrested for the felonies, they showed up at my house, and the boys were still there. And I was kind of letting you stay there. I kind of wasn't letting Steve stay there because, he had that OD in that. I mean, there was just so much going on. And child services really saved me. I mean, they're the ones that said, look, she cannot be here at all. So I had to wrap my mind around that. And, they helped me stop enabling you. I had to make a choice between the boys and you, which was tough.
Yeah.
But I knew this was going to be really difficult. But yeah, I mean, I'm thankful for them because I did see a change in the boys because they were not constantly in the drama, you know, and they missed you desperately. I mean, they wanted to talk to you, but I knew it wasn't in their best interest. I mean, they, you know, they just saw too much for that age. Um, yeah. So I knew it wasn't in their best interest. And I even stopped letting you talk to them on the phone. There were times that we would come and get you because you needed a ride somewhere. And this was kind of before that. And even some of those conversations and things that happened, I knew, and it wasn't, you know, something you're doing. It's just you were an addict.
Right.
You know, you were behaving like an addict.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everything is everybody else's fault. Nothing is yours. And so, yeah, I just had to pull them away from that, and things got better for us.
Yeah.
Although I was always gut-wrenchingly scared of what was going on. So,
yeah. Well, I know that those experiences that you went through, there's people out there that are going to see this video that have a loved one that's in active addiction. How did you detach with love during those times and put up those boundaries, knowing that I'm your only daughter? I'm sure that that was so hard for you. Like, how
yeah.
did you do that?
All right. Well, early on in your addiction, it was with the old boyfriend, and I had gone to see you one day because I hadn't seen you in days. I didn't know where you were. And so I went with my niece, and we found you at a hotel in Nokomis. And you came to the door, and you were like 85 pounds wet. I mean, you were just skinny. You looked horrible. You had some bruises on you. I knew that it was bad. You had that dog hold up in there, you know,
Yeah.
and I was so scared that night. And so it's so hard to talk about. But I went home that night, and I got on my knees, and I'd heard in the Bible, I'd read in the Bible that a lot of people prayed on their face, like they get on the ground and block everything out and pray. So so that's what I did. I rolled out of bed, face on the ground, and I just started praying. And I mean, literally, I felt like hours went by. And I got up that night, and I had so much peace over me, because what I had done was I had this vision in this time period where I was holding you, like I was, you know, just squeezing you and trying to help you. And I was begging Jesus to save you, you know, just to get you out of this addiction and, you know, to change our lives. And I remember I laid you at Jesus' feet in the dream. I mean, I literally rolled you out and laid you down. And in my mind, it was a visual of what true surrender is all about. It was a visual of what true surrender is all about. You have to let go, and you have to give them to God. And I picked you up a lot of times after that. That's just the truth. Many times I just said, oh, okay, I'm going to do this one, you know, and I just go back, pick you up. And then I just realized I have no control. Right. God has all the control. The only thing I can control is me. Now, my actions, what I do, how I handle what I do. And I have really no influence over what you were doing. So I knew I had to surrender you to Jesus, because I knew that he loved you more than I did. And that was a lot. And so you have to believe that. And here's the truth. Like, I knew that your future could be grim. Like, I knew it could be that you would die. I mean, I knew that was a possibility. And I had to surrender you anyways, because even that I have no control over. We don't keep our kids alive by hanging on to them. So,
yeah. Well, I know that the reason that I eventually found recovery is because you reported me to the police because you found out where I was at, because I had warrants for my arrest. So those last few weeks of my addiction were really bad, and they were really dark, and I was with a really bad person.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a whole different thing. And the kids really didn't have a lot of contact at that point in time. Thank goodness, because that was just not a good situation. But yeah, I knew where you were. And the cops had showed up at my house at 3 a.m. looking for you because you had warrants. And, they had to come in, look around, talk to me. I told them you weren't here. They wanted to know where you were. I wasn't 100% sure where you were. I knew where you were, but I didn't know where you were.
Right.
So I had gone over there for something. Ended up, remember I got the flat tire, the whole thing. It was a mess.
Yes. Yes.
But regardless, I figured out where you were. And that week I had talked to you about turning yourself in. I begged you to turn yourself in. And I could tell that it was not, it was probably not going to happen, that you just weren't going to do it. And I was scared for you. I knew it was bad. I knew that place that you were in was not good. So I called that officer and I, tried to get a hold of him, and he didn't return my call. And so I relentlessly called him. He was the one that was looking for you. I figured that was my best angle, was just tell him to go get you. But I also reported you to Crime Stoppers once I couldn't get a hold of them. And it was over a holiday weekend because you were arrested July 1, right? So I think
On a
he
Monday.
had the weekend off. And so, yeah, I called him first thing Monday morning because I'd been calling him all weekend. And he answered. He says, yes, we have her in holding. Someone from Crime Stoppers called and reported her. And I was like, yep, I know. That was me. And honestly, they couldn't get to you quick enough. I mean, I would rather you, and I have personal experience with this from other family members. I mean, I'd rather you be in jail sober than to be on the streets in that scary environment. And I don't think jail's the answer, but that was the better choice.
Right.
So
yeah.
I actually ended up making a little bit of money on that Crime Stoppers, which is okay. I mean, I did it, so it's all right.
And so when I got to jail, you wouldn't take my calls at first. And now, like today, when I look back on that, I'm so grateful that you didn't take my calls, because that's where I found my gift of desperation at,
Yeah, that was really tough. I mean, anyone that has an addict, a child, I mean, when they want what they want, they are mean and ugly, and it's so I just chose not to take your calls because I knew you wanted me to try and bail you out or help you or whatever. I was like, nope. I'm gonna give her a little bit of time to get her head clean.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, a girlfriend of mine.
Sonia wants you to answer. I'm like, I don't care. I'm not answering.
Yeah, and that was good. But eventually, though,
Yeah.
you did start answering a few weeks later.
Of course.
Yeah. And I had a girlfriend of mine that I was in jail with, and I didn't know this, but I didn't remember this, but she told me that she would hear me talk to you on the phone and tell you that I'm going to do it, and I'm going to get my kids back, and I'm going to stay clean. Do you remember those conversations?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And how did you feel about that?
Well, you told me that when you were using too. I mean,
right.
Like it was my fault that I had them, that I was keeping them from you.
Right.
But once you started into the program, I mean, I could hear a glimmer of hope in your voice. It was different. And I had friends that went through the Viper program. And they are still clean and sober today. That was the one program I always wanted you to go through. I asked you to go down there and just sit on the steps, beg them to take you in. And they do that. They will take people in if they just go sit on the steps and show them they want recovery. So, yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry. What was the question?
Well, so let's talk about that though. So when I got to the Viper program and you noticed some things were changing, like when did you start to have hope that things were going to be different this time, because I did make so many empty promises before. Like, was I making promises this time? Like, when did you start to feel like something might be different?
Well, I don't think a parent ever loses complete hope. I mean, we always have hope. We're the one, that has the most hope. But I was going to church on Sundays, and I would bring the boys there on Sundays at Salvation Army, Viper. And, we would see you. So we got to spend that 2 hours with you each week, kind of going through it and, seeing your progress and seeing how you were doing. I'd see how you were interacting with other people, who you were kind of choosing and, the way that you would behave with other people. All of those signs are signals, because an addict wants to be with other addicts. Someone who's looking to change their life wants to be with people that are changing their lives.
Right. There's
a big difference. And so I could see that you were, opening up to this stuff. You wanted to learn a different way. Yeah, I mean, I definitely saw the progress there, and we were very, very hopeful, no doubt about it. I had hope. And I will tell you, you would have a 2 months clean or 3 months clean, and my friends would say, "Oh, how's Sonia doing?" or whatever, and I would say, "You're doing good, 2 months, 3 months," and immediately they always responded with, "Well, they could use she could, get 3-4 months clean." I mean, I don't know why people feel the need so strongly to protect you from the fact that they might relapse. You know what I mean?
Right.
But
as if you don't know that already.
Right. I need that protection. But I got to the place where I realized that I needed to be grateful for today. Because the past is the past. I don't even know if I'll be here tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like, tomorrow is a whole nother worry on its own, just like the Bible says. And so you're supposed to be great. Even parents of addicts should be grateful for today. Even if you're not an addict, you should be grateful for today.
Yeah. And then I went into sober living. I commenced the program, right? I went into sober living, and I was I was on community control, which is basically like house arrest. So the only time that I could leave was to go to meetings or to go to work. And I'm really grateful for that, because it taught me accountability, and I remember you came and visited me on the holidays because I couldn't leave the house. And then we started working on getting the kids back, and we got an apartment, and you had my kids with you from the time they were in kindergarten. I mean, for like 5 or 6 years, you raised my kids at that age. So tell me, what was that transition like from having the kids into us having the kids? Like, what was that like for you?
Well, first of all, the fact that you went to a sober living facility afterwards was really, because we could have gone through the whole cycle of where you wanted to come back and stay at my house. You know what I mean? And I knew that I was not going to let that happen. I couldn't, because child services already said it couldn't happen. So I was so grateful for the sober living facility. And I realized how important it is that, your kids who are trying to stay sober live with other people who are trying to stay sober. Because the truth is I feel like once you do get into sobriety, I think that there are many triggers at my house.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Parents forget that. When your child goes through addiction and then they come out on the other side and they're in recovery, it's like they went to war or something. They come back different. I hear parents saying, "I just want my kid back." Well, your kid's not coming back. It's going to be a different relationship, and you're going to have to learn to adjust, because not only is my house a trigger, but I can be. We had to kind of learn like a different way. I remember after you got out, I don't remember how clean you were or how far down the road it was, but we went to see that movie, Four Good Days. I don't know what we were thinking.
We were both triggered.
We were both like PTSD. We were like in shock at the end of the movie.
Yes.
This was not a good idea.
For sure.
It was a great movie, but it was,
Yeah.
I would rather have seen Alice in Wonderland or something. I
Right,
don't
me
know.
too.
That
But
was a
that's a
hard
really
movie to
good
watch
point,
because
though.
it was so real for us, you
Yeah,
know? I mean, all of those things, everything that happened in that movie was so real of things
and
that other people, you know, lived through.
yeah, things
Um,
we lived through.
yeah, that right. But yeah, that's one thing I always think that, you know, people expect, you know, things to be the same when you get clean and sober, and it's not. You have to learn a new way of, you know, being together.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, and as far as the kids go, I mean, I always wanted to be with you. You know, it's never that I never had any feelings of wanting ownership. I
Right.
just wanted them healthy.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I was super happy, and you know, really, it's the first time in like 10 years I wasn't taking care of people anymore. You know,
Right.
so yeah, it was. I mean, we went on a nice vacation. I mean, it was nice, and I knew the boys were, and you know, there was an adjustment period
Mhm.
because I feel like you felt like you hadn't been involved for so long that you didn't know how to do it, so to speak, or
Right.
what to do, or and you know, I mean, I just had to encourage you because I knew you knew what that you could do it and that you knew how to do it. You were just afraid. We're
Right.
all, you know, so and you know, there were techniques and stuff that I used with the boys because they're boys, you know, parenting skills, and we, you know, worked on some of those things. But I mean, they're super healthy
Yeah.
and happy.
Yeah. And I just want to like circle back to something you said a minute ago about me living, like potentially living with you after I got out of treatment. And I think that's really important, like what you
Yeah,
were saying, because I was really sick, right? And my
right,
addiction made me very sick mentally, physically, emotionally. But my sickness affected our relationship. So we
right,
had to relearn how to have a healthy relationship without it being like a dependent
right,
relationship, you know?
right,
That's why I couldn't come back and live with you. And you're right, the triggers like that. When I first got out of treatment and I would walk into your house, it was hard for me because
right,
I have done so many things there and so many using memories that it was
right,
a lot in the beginning. And I could only come for short periods of time because I had so many memories. But, today, like those things have changed and I feel very comfortable,
right,
because the house that you live in is the house that my family has had since before I was even born. Since you were in high school, Nana and Papa had that house. So,
right.
there's so many memories that happen there.
Good
Yeah,
memories too. Yeah.
yeah. But I
Well,
think
I
that,
think that's important for parents to keep in mind. You know, I mean, um, you know, we go through so much in your addiction, you know, that when you come out, you know, I think, and I don't know, I mean, we feel somewhat responsible, you know, for all the help that we've given and like the relationship should be different. I don't know, but you have to keep in mind that the child is going to be different when they come out, and you're going to have to learn a new relationship with them, and you know, and how to um be okay with them not, you know, coming around as much as they used to, because before they needed you a lot. Now the goal is that they don't need you.
yes.
And for some parents that's hard, you know, for them to let go of that. So
Right. So how are things today? Like when you look back on everything now and see where we're at now, like what do you think about like when you reflect back on all of that stuff and see where things are today?
well, I am super grateful. I mean, this is, you know, I mean, I never envisioned our lives to be the way that they went. I'm still grateful for all of those times. Um, maybe not all of them, but you know, I mean, the biggest thing is that, you know, if you have a child that's in addiction, you know, we we have to um, be willing to give them the ability to find their desperation in this. We can't fix them. You know, like you say, the gift of desperation. I mean, there's got to be a reason that they want to come out of it. If we always make it easy for them to be an addict, then they're not going to stop. So we have to learn how to step back and let them find their reason to want help. And so many times we justify it in so many different ways that, we many times get in God's way, and we don't allow that to happen. We are the problem most of the time. So, and a parent, I'll just say this real quick. I feel like, and I've talked to other parents about this. I mean, we carry some guilt. We're like, I didn't raise a drug addict. You know what I mean? Like, you put so much of your life into, raising a healthy child, and when they turn into a drug addict, you carry this guilt. And not that I don't feel like it's my fault, but at the same time, you're always wondering, even though I don't think I could have done anything better. There are some things I would change, but you carry that guilt. So when you're on the other side of it, for me, it's a God-given answer to prayer. So.
Right. Yeah. Is there any last words that you would encourage somebody who's got a loved one going through addiction, or a parent, or maybe it's a child of an addict? Anything that you would want to say to them?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing is, figure out what it is that you can do to keep yourself healthy, which in turn will keep them healthy. Like, again, like I said, the only person I could control was me. And so I think the Al-Anon meetings are great. I mean, I got a lot of really beneficial tools and way to handle things through Al-Anon. I think I used to listen to Dr. Phil a lot, and he would have, different people on with the same problems, addiction problems, and his answers were so cut and dry, and it would make sense to me. Yeah, why am I doing that? That's just stupid. I mean, I read a lot of books. And also I went to meetings. I Celebrate Recovery. I was very much involved in, and I did the 12 steps. I mean, I think people think the 12 steps is only for addicts, and it's not. The 12 steps can be for mothers of addicts. I mean, because at the time I wasn't necessarily doing it for you. I did it, years earlier, but you learn so much in those programs. There's lots of different programs out there, and luckily now there's the internet ways that you can connect to people, which there's so much shame in drug abuse, right? There's so much in the world, people make comments. I mean, it's horrible. So to go to a meeting really took a lot of effort, whereas now you can just watch things on the internet, and it's so much more out there and available. So there are definitely, places to get help and to connect with other people, just for encouragement, because again, we have no control over this. For me, it was the only thing that really saved me through all of it was my relationship with God. That's it. That is the number one, guiding force that helped me get through it all, for sure.
Yeah, me too. Well,
with His grace and peace.
Amen.
In my life.
Well, thank you so much, Mama, for doing this with me. And I'm so grateful that you were able to be there for my children through all of those years, and for me. And I'm grateful that we were able to talk about this today. So my mom has a Facebook page for support loved ones of addicts. I'm going to link it in the comments below in this video so that you can join that page if you are the loved one of an addict. And again, thank you so much for doing this with me, Mama. I love you so much.
I love you too, honey.
Okay.